Good day. We decided to make this video because ever since I started learning Spanish, it's been hard to talk about pregnancy because many of the terms used to describe that process can't be translated word for word.
Before we actually have a conversation, let's talk about some of the vocabulary we'll be using.
Good idea. Let's start with vocabulary that relates specifically to pregnancy. For example, expectant mother or pregnant woman means a woman who is pregnant.
Right, and to give birth or have a baby is when a woman produces a baby from her body. So when a child is born, the umbilical cord that attaches it to the mother is cut, which makes the new baby or newborn truly independent.
Yes, and there are words for the timing of the pregnancy. For example, the due date is the date when the baby is expected to arrive. And when someone asks, "How far along are you?" they want to know how long you've been pregnant.
When the baby decides to arrive, the mother goes into labor, or in other words, the process of giving birth starts. But if she goes into labor too early, that process is called premature labor.
You're right. And many babies who are born prematurely spend the first days in the NICU unit, which is the neonatal intensive care unit, where the NICU nurses are trained to take special care of them. And sometimes they need to be put in a baby warmer to stabilize their body temperature.
That reminds me about the medical vocabulary that we are going to use. For example, an emergency call is a call made to, in this case, doctors and nurses, asking them to respond immediately.
Yeah, and we'll also talk about vital signs, which are measurements of essential body functions, like the heart rate, which is the number of times a heart beats per minute.
In the case of premature birth, those vital signs need to be tracked or monitored to make sure everything is okay.
We'll also be using different phrases that might be unfamiliar, like "guess what," which we say to attract attention.
Or other expressions to show surprise, such as "no kidding," "that's unbelievable," or "wow."
And words or phrases like "apparently" or "as far as I know" lets you say that you're not sure about what you're about to say.
On the other hand, if you are totally sure of something you hear, you can say "for sure." And if an explanation you hear is clear, you can say "that makes sense."
And when we give our opinions about things, we also say things like "kind of cool" or "awesome" to show we admire or approve of what we've just heard. Or "it's lucky" to say we think it's a good thing that something unexpected happened.
There are also interesting phrasal verbs in our conversation, like jumping, that means suddenly becoming involved in a situation. Help out means do something to make another person's job or task easier. And tear up means you get so emotional that you almost start to cry.
We also use a few common idioms like "on the scene," which means a place where something is happening. Life-changing event is something that has an effect on you that's strong enough to change your life. And if you blow someone's mind, you do something that really impresses, shocks, or surprises them.
Hey Vicky, I found other words that I'm not familiar with. For example, frantic, overhead, cut off date, and shoelaces. Could you explain those words to me?
Sure. You're frantic when you need to act quickly, so you do something in a hurried, excited, and chaotic way. Overhead is something that's above your head, like the speakers in a plane. The cutoff date is the last date when it's possible to do something. And shoelaces are cords or leather strips that you use to tie your shoes. Other words you might not be familiar with are urgent, which is something you have to do right now, and microwavable, which is something you can cook or heat in a microwave oven.
Great, thanks. Finally, I found two words related to travel. Land is what happens when a plane comes out to the air and arrives on land, and on board is talking about being on or in this case, an aircraft.
Great. Now that we've explained most of the vocabulary we're going to use, let's start talking. Hey, Peely, guess what? I just read that a woman gave birth on a plane.
No kidding. Somebody had a baby on a plane. What's that story?
Well, apparently the woman was on her way to a Hawaiian vacation when she went into premature labor about halfway through the flight.
That's unbelievable. What did they do?
Well, the pilot made a frantic overhead announcement for help, and the doctor on board heard the urgent emergency call and told the flight attendant he was a physician.
It's lucky he was on board.
For sure. By the time he got to the mother, 3 NICU nurses were already on the scene. And because the birth happened on a plane, without all the tools available in a hospital, they had to improvise. They used a couple of shoelaces to tie and cut through the umbilical cord. Then they made a baby warmer out of microwavable bottles, and they used an Apple Watch to measure the newborn's heart rate.
Wow. So they were able to track the baby's vital signs.
Not all of them. They really had to work together to keep the baby stable for 3 hours until the plane landed.
I'm surprised that an expectant woman was allowed to get on the plane. It is safe for pregnant women to fly.
I had the same question, so I Googled it. And here in the US, it depends on the airline. I guess some airlines don't have restrictions, but others recommend against flying at 39 weeks or later, and some require medical certificates from a doctor if they're flying within 7 days of their due date.
How far along was she?
As far as I know, she was 29 weeks along, several weeks before the cutoff date.
Okay, that makes sense. In that case, it's kind of cool that such a life-changing event happened for them on their vacation.
What blew my mind was how lucky she was to have 3 nurses and a doctor on board the same flight when she went into emergency labor.
Exactly. Everybody jumped in and helped out. It sounds awesome.
Yes, I wasn't surprised to hear that everyone teared up when they visited him in the hospital later.
Hola Becky, ¿a que no adivinas? Acabo de leer que una mujer dio a luz en un avión.
¿En serio? ¿Alguien ha tenido un bebé en un avión? ¿Cuál es la historia?
Aparentemente, la mujer estaba de camino de vacaciones a Hawái cuando se le adelantó el parto a mitad del recorrido.
Eso es increíble. ¿Qué hicieron?
El piloto hizo un frenético anuncio aéreo pidiendo ayuda. Un doctor a bordo escuchó la llamada de emergencia y dijo al asistente del avión que él era un facultativo.
Ah, fue una suerte que estuviera a bordo.
Es verdad, para cuando llegó hasta la madre, 3 enfermeras de UCI ya estaban en escena y porque el nacimiento ocurrió en un avión sin las herramientas disponibles en un hospital, ellos tuvieron que improvisar. Usaron un par de cordones de zapatos para atar y cortar el cordón umbilical. Después, hicieron una incubadora con botellas de microondas y usaron un reloj Apple para medir el ritmo cardíaco del recién nacido.
Wow. Entonces, ¿pudieron rastrear las señales vitales del bebé?
No todas. Tuvieron que trabajar juntos para mantener al bebé estable durante 3 horas antes que el avión aterrizó.
Estoy sorprendida de que a una mujer en estado se le permitiera subir a un avión. ¿Es seguro volar para las mujeres embarazadas?
Me hice la misma pregunta, así que lo busqué en Google. Aquí en España eso depende de la aerolínea. Supongo que en algunas no tienen restricciones, pero otras recomiendan no viajar en avión después de las 36 semanas. Si necesitas viajar, las compañías aéreas solicitan un certificado médico. Una semana después del parto, ya puedes volar.
¿Cuándo salía de cuentas?
Por lo que sé, estaba de 29 semanas, varias semanas antes de la fecha límite.
Ok, eso tiene sentido. En tal caso, fue bastante guay que ese acontecimiento ocurriera durante sus vacaciones.
Exacto. Lo que me descuadró fue cómo ella pudo tener tanta suerte de tener 3 enfermeras y un doctor a bordo del mismo avión cuando se le adelantó el parto.
Exactamente. Todos se involucraron y echaron una mano. Suena impresionante.
Sí, no me extrañó escuchar que a todos se les saltaron las lágrimas cuando la visitaron más tarde en el hospital.
Thank you, Pili.
You're welcome, Benki, and thanks you for watching today.
Definitely. Thank you. If you like this video, you can follow it. And if you have questions, you can visit the blog on my website where the vocabulary words and definitions are posted. Have a great day and keep talking.
Bye.